anniversaries this week.
Yeah.
You're being pointed out there, man.
Yeah.
30 and strong?
Oh my gosh.
I just stalked it this morning.
There we go.
Snickers? Anybody else?
Anybody?
Going once?
That's why I was taking the whole bag.
Going twice? So, if you don't have a bulletin, just go ahead and raise your hand and Oliver will get one to you. There's a few things to note in there. They're looking for some characters for Follow the Star.
We got full room. Plenty of characters.
So if you think you can be a character in this, you don't have to, a lot of them you don't have to speak, you just got to stand there and look pretty.
Well, that could be a problem.
That's not
That's the
exactly the
issue.
same thing.
Oh,
You can be a character and not look pretty.
well, true, I'll look in the mirror and okay. But the rehearsals are Monday nights at from 6:30 to 8. Definitely be there no later than November 6th to be part of it. But please let them know. Contact Casey if you want more information on that. This Saturday, the 28th, we will be having a fall festival at Ennebecker Park. The youth will be hosting it, but we still need candy. I'm getting notices from people all over the city that they're actually interested in coming to this thing. So please, 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 if you can donate some candy, bring them to the church. Or contact me. My contact information is in the bulletin. We could also use a little bit of help setting up on the 28th. We'll be there at 1 o'clock to start setting up at Ennebecker Park. And then that Sunday we'll be having our annual business report. If you want to know what's going on with the church, the finances, all the different projects we've been having going on, please stay with us after church on Sunday and next Sunday, and we will be happy to fill you in with any and all your questions. We have two other announcements real quick. Casey, ladies first.
Ladies first.
I don't need that. I have a big mouth.
There's some people that can't hear. They have other devices. This helps them hear.
Okay. I just want to take a few minutes, and I've wanted to do this before, but my tremors kind of make me self-conscious. So just bear with me. I want to thank all the brothers and sisters for helping out with meals. You make what I do so much easier when I call, and it's not, oh no, what do you want now? It's what can I do? What do you need? So I want to thank you. And especially with Ed's passing, I have received thank you letters or notes before from people that we have helped. But I'd like to read this to you because it's actually to all those that help me with meals for the sick and memorial services. Words are not enough. Your goodness is so very appreciated. A note of thanks to let you know you are much appreciated. Our family is grateful for all you've done. Love, the Cooper family. So thank you. And they also made a contribution to the church. Thank you.
These two guys working later.
Well, I might, but let's postpone that for a certain time. I wanted to give you an update. I was talking to you about our after-school program a while back. This last week was Parent-Teacher Conference Week in Berlin. So guess what? Lo and behold happens during Parent-Teacher Conference Week. A lot of parents find out some bad news that their kids are not having the grades that they thought. So this week I have leads on, I think, now 6 new students coming to after school. Parents that either called me or I called them. We got 6 new families that are interested in having kids come after school. So, I'm here to update you and let you know, but I'm also here to put the bite on you a little bit. That means that we're going to need some more tutors. These kids are all, every family that I talk to, are elementary and 1 middle school student. So we're not talking like, calculus or anything like that. Some of them need reading help, which means they're going to bring stories that you can read with them, or they're going to bring language arts worksheets, or they're going to have math worksheets. They're going to bring specific work. That's what I'm telling these parents to do, is send specific things. So they just need someone there that can help them complete homework, complete their work to turn in that week. We're not asking you to come up with a curriculum or do some massive program. We just need somebody that can sit with these kids for an hour or 2 Wednesday afternoon. So please, we're really going to need it. I would hate to have all these leads show up and then we don't have enough people. So please, 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 if you were interested, please, Wednesday is an important day that I hope we're going to get all of these people to show up. Thanks.
All right, there's no other announcements at the moment. Let's go ahead and pray. And Ms. Joanne, we have a children's sermon, right? Awesome. Heavenly Father, I thank you. I thank you for this church family. I thank you for putting us together and teaching us to love not just each other, but the world as you love the world. Lord, bless the children's sermon and Casey's sermon. Let it be your words that come out. Let it be your wisdom that we learn. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name. Amen. Children, you're welcome to come forward. No, facing me, facing me.
The other direction,
Watch out, let Ms. Joy get through.
Okay, Ryder, you're gonna have to let the old cricket through. Thank you. Well, good morning and God bless you. How are you today? All right. Well, I'll have to tell you, you're going to have to be patient with Miss Joanne this morning. Guess what I did? I fell out of bed. And I really banged myself up. But that's all right, I'm still here. Still here talking with you. I got some stuff in here I want to talk to you about. I got a towel. I've got a washcloth and a toothbrush, a comb, some soap. Let me ask you this question. Did you wash behind your ears this morning before you came to church? You're going to admit it, you did? Did you brush your teeth? How many brushed their teeth before they came? How many washed behind their ears? You. And you use some soap?
I do.
You do? Did you comb your hair? Remember to comb your hair?
No.
I did.
You did? Good for you. Let me ask you another question. Did you pray to be clean inside before you came?
When?
Did you pray or read your Bible and everything? You know, the inside needs to be just as clean as the outside. But I'm sorry to say that there's a lot of people that just, this is just a thing. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about righteousness. You know, I've talked to a lot of people over the years. I'm really old. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of excuses about why people can't come to church. They say, well, I don't have the clothes to wear to go to church. Do you think God worries about that?
No.
Lady says, I didn't get my hair fixed, so I can't go to church. Does God worry about that?
No.
No. How about, there ain't anything but a bunch of sinners over there in that church.
No.
And I said, hello, we're all sinners. That's why we're in church, so we can clean it up, right? So where do we get righteousness?
God.
From God, you're right. Let me read you a couple of scriptures here. I'm reading from 2 Corinthians, 5:21. It said, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. And the second one in Philippians 1:11 says, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ. You know what? We need to remember that no matter who comes to our church or how they look or how they dress, even if they haven't brushed their teeth, combed their hair, or washed behind their ears, they're seeking the same thing we are, the righteousness of God.
Amen.
And they can only find that through our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And my prayer for you boys and girls today is that you'll find that righteousness and hide it in your heart, that you'll embrace it, hold on to it, and that Jesus Christ will be your God and your righteousness. Okay? Barry's going to come and pray for us. Then we're going to children's church. I've got some fun things to do, okay?
I think from the answers you were getting, some of them could probably pray better than I could here.
Of course.
Father God, we come before you this morning just thanking you for the little children and thanking you for Joanne and her ability to get across to the children about righteousness and the fact that we're all sinners and it doesn't matter what we look like when we come into the church, and that we should welcome everybody in. We just ask that you bless these children and give them strength and the words to talk to other children about God and how it makes us feel. And we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning. How are you all doing today? Cowboys haven't played yet, so it depends on how that goes. Oh. This morning, I want to continue talking about the Beatitudes. I want you to look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. And I want you to think about this question. What do you hunger and thirst for? What is it that you hunger and thirst for? Because Jesus speaks to that here in the Beatitudes. Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, this is still the introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. We've been talking about this now for a few weeks. This is Matthew and the Beatitudes, the blessings that he talks about, and how they're kind of surprising blessings. But this blessing, not so surprising. Honestly, I think this is probably one of my favorite of the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. When I read this verse this week, and I knew that it was coming up, I was thinking of something, a story that kind of goes with this. If you got your Bible handy, I want you to flip over to chapter 6 of John. Take a look at John chapter 6. And there's a story here that made me think of hunger and thirsting for righteousness, for they will be filled. In John chapter 6, this is Jesus and feeding the 5,000. When Jesus fed the 5,000, he had 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. He's got a huge crowd of people that come to listen to him teach. He feeds them. This is one of Jesus' miracles here in John. He feeds them, and then after he feeds the crowd, he leaves. John says that he leaves to be by himself. Well, the disciples are left there, and they decide to cross the Sea of Galilee. They get in a boat. They start across the Sea of Galilee without Jesus. In the middle of the night, they decide to travel. It's evening. And a storm comes up, waves are coming and tossing the boat around. And the disciples are there without Jesus, or at least they thought they were without Jesus. He appears walking on the water toward them. You're all familiar with that story? Well, that story is kind of famous, but I want to talk about what happens when they get to the other side of the lake. When they get to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus talks to the disciples, and the crowd, in the meantime, overnight, follows Jesus. They're looking for him. They come to him. They come to him across the Sea of Galilee looking for Jesus. And Jesus had been trying to teach the disciples, but he gets interrupted by the people. And there's an interesting passage here. There's an interesting thing that I think goes with our beatitude today about blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Let's take a look at John chapter 6, verse 26. So if you flipped over to John 6, follow on down till you get to verse 26. John chapter 6 starts with the feeding of the 5,000 and moves on to crossing the sea and walking on the water. And then the crowd shows up. And the crowd is talking to Jesus. And they want to see more miracles from Jesus. They want to see what he can do for them. And Jesus says, I tell you the truth. You want to be with me because I fed you. Not because you understood the miraculous signs, but don't be so concerned about perishable things like food. Spend your energy seeking the eternal life that the Son of Man can give you. For God the Father has given me the seal of his approval. Jesus is not talking about physical food here that they're after. He's talking about a spiritual need. And the response that the crowd has is kind of interesting. Verse 28 goes on and says, they replied, we want to perform God's works too. What should we do? So if Jesus isn't going to do this miracle that they came to see, they're kind of like fanboys. Are you all familiar with that term, fanboys? It's a new term, kind of a millennial term for fans, for people that follow other people, that try to be around their celebrity. Well, these fanboys are trying to be around Jesus, and when he says that what they need to do, they ask, and they say, we want to do that too. What should we do? Well, look at Jesus here. He says, this is the only work God wants from you. Believe in the one he has sent. Well, what do they take as a response there? They answer, show us a miraculous sign if you want us to believe in you. What can you do? After all, our ancestors ate manna while they journeyed through the wilderness. The scriptures say Moses gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus fed 5,000 people the day before this conversation. 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, he feeds 5,000 people. That's an incredible, miraculous event. It was so miraculous that they followed him and are begging to see more. Show us what you can do. And he stops and he says, wait a minute. You should not be worried about, bread, physical bread, about being satisfied physically. You should worry about spiritualness, being full spiritually. And they say, okay, what do we do? Well, when they say that all they have to do is believe in the one he has sent, they don't actually take that. Did you notice here at the bottom in 30:31, Moses fed Israel for 40 years with manna from heaven. You fed us one meal, one day. What else you got? That's basically what they're saying. They're calling out Jesus because so far Moses has got him beat. Moses gave them bread from heaven to eat. So they want to know what Jesus can do to beat Moses. Well, this is Jesus that they're talking to. This is not some sideshow magician. This is not some circus performer. This is not some stage act. Jesus doesn't want to one-up anybody. He wants to teach. He wants to make a point. Watch what happens. Jesus said, I tell you the truth. Moses didn't give you bread from heaven. My Father did. And now he offers you the true bread from heaven. The true bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Wink, wink. You know who he's referring to here, right? And now he offers you the true bread from heaven. Wink, wink. You understand what the wink, wink means, right? It's a little double meaning here. When Jesus says bread from heaven, is he referring to actual literal physical bread that you eat? No. That's the wink, wink part. Who is he referring to? Or, well, I just gave it away. I should have said, what's he referring to? But who is he referring to? Himself. Sir, they said, give us that bread every day. See how they want? They're still stuck in that Moses mode of Moses fed people every day for 40 years. What do you got? They're still stuck there. And of course, his famous response, then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Jesus tells them, I am the bread of life. Not just one day, one meal. You saw that. Not like Moses for 40 years. You've already heard about that. He says, I am the bread of life, and you will never go hungry. You will never go thirsty. That's not a one-meal event. That's not a 40-year event. That's an eternal event.
Amen.
Jesus is trying to explain spiritual things, yet the crowd was stuck in the physical. Makes me think, how often do we have that same problem? Where God is trying to talk to us about something spiritually, and we are stuck in this broken, cursed, fallen world, and we are more interested, focused, worried about the physical things, about the things of this world. Which to us, yeah, that might seem important. But compared to what Jesus is trying to teach these followers, no. The spiritual, eternal, that bread of life is more important. So when Jesus is talking way back at the Beatitude, we'll go back to the introduction today. When Jesus is talking, he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Is Jesus literally talking about hunger and thirsting like, oh my gosh, Casey better get going here, it's almost noon? Is that what he's talking about? No. He's talking about a spiritual hunger, a spiritual thirst. Ted, that last song you sang, was it about that hunger and thirst? Was it about wanting to have that relationship with God? That's what Jesus is referring to here. That's the lesson that he's trying to teach. Not the physicalness of food in this world, but the hunger and thirst for a spiritual relationship with God through Jesus. And when Jesus says, I am the bread of life, he says, I am the bread of life. The very next thing that I thought about is a communion, Lord's Supper. Jesus on that last night, before he was arrested, calls the disciples together. They're having this supper, and tonight, or we call that night now, Lord's Supper, Last Supper. And when he feeds them, when he serves them, he's giving them a physical food. He's giving them something that their body needs for nutrition. He's giving them a drink that their body needs. But when he serves them, is he also referring to something else? He is. I am the bread of life. I got to think that those disciples on that night of the Last Supper, they did not know what was going to happen that night. They didn't know what was going to happen as soon as they left. That there was going to be an arrest, that there was going to be a trial, that there was going to be a crucifixion, let alone realize that there was going to be a resurrection 3 days later. They didn't realize any of those things were coming. But after the fact, they did. They had to have realized what Jesus was setting up for them at that Last Supper. What he actually told, they remembered and thought, he's not just meaning bread. He's not just meaning drink. He's talking about himself and his sacrifice. Well, Paul writes about that in Corinthians. He's writing to the church at Corinth, and he's giving instructions for the Last Supper, the commemorative Last Supper that the Corinthian church was to hold. They were to have a meal together, and not just physical food of, let's sit down and have a potluck, which, by the way, we're pretty good at that. We can do that potluck pretty well. Paul's giving instruction to the church at Corinth, and he's talking to them about this Last Supper, this meal, and he's reminding them, all those Corinthian Christians that were not at that Last Supper, what it meant. So I thought this week that we should be like that church in Corinth that Paul's writing to, and that we should commemorate, we should remember Jesus and that Last Supper. So could I have the 4 men that I spoke to come up? We're actually going to have a Lord's Supper service.